Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Mr. Hino with Mr. Hino's Lego Robotics. Um, some of you have been asking what some tips or advice for those of you that are doing FLL. So what I'm planning to do in this video is just to cover one aspect of giving you the advice or tips and kind of just breaking it up into different parts. And then I'll do some more videos to cover other things, but there's just so much information packed into everything. I didn't want to overwhelm you with just one video. So today's video is just going to cover one thing and then just unpacking or breaking that up into different pieces. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about for FLL is going to be practice. How do you handle practice? What are some goals? What are some tips or advice when coaches and students meet to practice and go over things that you're going to be doing in your competition? So I'm going to just take the word again, practice, and go over what we do. And then, like anything that you guys might hear for advice or tips, take what you like and go, yeah. And then whatever you think is not good for your team or you guys, then just say, hey, that's them. That's maybe not for us. And then you find what works for your team. So let's go to the first thing. When you practice, I always tell my students or my teams, practice like you would practice in the real competition. So are there some things we do that kind of give us that environment? So the first thing is we always will get to the point where they know they're going to be timed. That 2.5 minutes that I will start them, and I always try to make it as real as I can and go 3, 2, 1 Lego, because that's the way they will start in the competition. And when they start their robots, I don't usually like to let them redo and go, oh wait, I messed up, especially if they start off really bad, like their first mission doesn't go well. I usually like to give them that feeling of, oh shoot, the first mission screwed up, what do we do? Just because in competition your first program might screw up, and there are no do-overs in competition. I mean, there are different rounds, but I usually like to have them in their mind already go, okay, if it screws up, what are we doing? Are we going to run that program again? Do we go to our second program and come back to it? So I usually don't like to reset their mission if they mess up that first one. I usually like to let them go and go, well, I'm still timing you. What are you going to do? And so that way they get the feeling of how it is in competition. Let's go to the board for the next part. When a team practices, I always want them to write down the missions that they plan to do for several reasons. I want them to always know their point totals. I always want them to visually see what it is they can accomplish, what they're working on. And, at the end of the match, I always want them to be able to do the math. Like if you didn't do one mission, what should your total be? So that way, again, when they get to the end of their mission and they see their point total, that should match up. And that would be something that, if the judges allow your team to approach them about a conflict of score, they would know. If this team's best total is the 240, and let's say that they don't do this punch mission right here, so they do everything but the punch mission, they should be at 220, and they should be able to know that. So if they see the scoreboard and it says 210, then they would be able to go, hey, we need to go see the judge or the scorekeeper and just validate that score. Another thing that I like to do with our teams is do mini scrimmages. This is good for two reasons. Number one, if there are 3 rounds in a competition, I want them to be able to see, hey, our score is improving, it's getting better. But especially if you have multiple teams, I want them to be able to compete against each other. I want them to inspire each other, like, hey, they're doing really good, let's see if we can do better. And then their nature comes out that they will get inspired to do better than the other team. So it's one of those things where if you have multiple teams, compete against each other So that way, when you get to the real competition, they already have that feeling of, hey, we want to do well. We already have that competitive edge, and not, they're not just going through the motions. They actually have that feeling of, hey, we want to do well. We want to see our scores increase. So as far as practice goes, I just have a few philosophies on that. Let's go back to my desk. So with practice, you also have to find that balance too. For coaches, we have to find the balance of, this is what we must do to be successful, but you always have to balance that with fun. I mean, that's obviously one of the FLL core values, is that, we have fun. So I'm always struggling each day to make sure that we're on pace to, get done what we're supposed to. But we have to sprinkle in fun. We have to make sure that, my students don't get burned out because we're so rigid. Like, we got to go from here to here to here to here. We have to take breaks to have fun, or else we will go crazy. Also, if you're practicing for core values, that's another thing I have my students practice, is having a task to do, working as a team, so that they're not going to the competition and now working together to solve a problem is now, foreign to them. So I know that in the robot game, they're going to be working together to solve a problem, but I also like to give them a separate, has nothing to do with the robot game problem. So that way they're forced to think outside the box of the robot game and to just focus in on accomplishing something. Like, I might just dump out a bunch of Legos and go, you guys build me something related to the theme or related to how your day has gone. And then they must now be on the spot. They must think, real quick to solve that problem. So if we take again the word practice, my philosophy is, you hear it all the time. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. I'm not a big fan of that comment because of this one thing, that if you don't practice the right way, it's not going to matter how much you practice. So Mr. Hino's philosophy is perfect practice makes perfect. So if your team is practicing everything, the way it should be done, like, having a timer and making sure that each step is the way that you should have it, then that practice should make perfect. So try to make, if we're going to review everything, try to make the practice as close to the real competition as you can. I used to coach basketball, and I would tell my players to do the same thing. If you're going to go out there and practice like it's practice, it's not going to feel that way when you're in the real game. So I always try to tell my student or my FLL teams, when you're practicing, pretend it's there. Pretend you're there at the competition. Pretend you have that 2.5 minutes and you're trying to get everything done. That way, when you get to the competition, it already feels like you have practiced that. So, all right, guys, I hope that was helpful. Hopefully you can take some of those tidbits and apply that to your FLL teams. And, it's a really fun thing to do, and it's enjoyable. Okay, guys, I'll be back tomorrow with another FLL tip, okay? I am Mr. Hino from Mr. Hino's Lego Robotics. I am out.